All right. Hello, everybody. We are live and welcome. Oh, boy. That took a bit longer. Stumbled all over my intro. Should have given that another second. My apologies. But we're live. Welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. We are your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. My name is Robert Winfrey, and I am your host. So thank you all very much. Thank you for being here. Always appreciate it. Let's see. What do we got today? Little bit to go through. We have to review UFC Fight Night 267, Strickland versus Hernandez, and preview UFC Fight Night 268, which is Moreno versus Kavanagh. You see back in Mexico City for that one, so that'll be fun. We got a review, preview, and then some news. Some fights got announced. We'll talk a little bit about that. On the UFC side, a few fights got announced. But the big news was, hey, we're a day late and the dollar short, but at least the day late part. We're making Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano in the year of our Lord 2026, so that'll be fun. So we'll talk a little bit about that, some of the other news, all that good stuff, because that's what we do here. All right. So per usual, anything, of course, you can do to interact with the product is always appreciated. Whether that's live or after the fact. Like this one's going up about just a little bit before 2, going live a little bit before 2 a.m. Eastern time. This is just the most convenient time for me to be able to do this kind of uninterrupted and not bother anyone else with my prattling. And I'm pretty much guaranteed not to have too many people walk behind me when I do it at this point in time. So this takes place in a shared space, and I just try to be cognizant of that for everyone else around me. So that's where we are with that. If you're watching after the fact, same thing applies. Please like, comment, subscribe, star rating, written review. Y'all know whatever's applicable to your platform of choice. Since this is mostly just YouTube now, that of course means a thumbs up if you'd like. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on the bell for notifications. I need the boilerplate, guys. I don't know what to tell you. The boilerplate is the boilerplate. But that's where we are, and yeah, I don't think I have anything else for the intro, so let's get into this, shall we? All right. Let's update this as we go. Okay. UFC Fight Night 267 was Saturday from Houston, Texas. How'd we do prediction-wise? Not great. Not great. Went, 8-6? 14 fights is a lot for them to get through. Like, they were cooking. I think even John Anik said at one point, like, we're turning and burning tonight, folks. It's part of the reason nobody gets an interview. Like, they had one sort of interview on the prelims. One. Like, that was it. Everything else was just, if you didn't get a finish, you didn't get an interview. And, well, here we are. So 8-6. Was I annoyed that I got wrong? I'm okay getting the main and co-main wrong, because I know my logic behind those, and I can live with being wrong about the co-main in particular. I can live with being wrong about that one the way that I was wrong about it. Picking Njokuani over Carlos Leal, that I should have got right. The other one, oh god, I didn't. The only reason I didn't change this was I didn't specifically asterisk this one, but every day we got closer to Jordan Levitt versus Yadir Del Valle, I was just like, you got that wrong. Levitt's going to win that fight. How could you possibly not see that coming? So I think that one and Njokuani and over Leal, my picks, those are the ones that bother me. Yeah, that Del Valle and Levitt fight too, man. I just, so mad at myself over that one. But yeah, again, the main and co-main getting wrong the way I did, I can live with it. I can. Delia and Spivak. No, I'm okay with being wrong there. Pereira, I didn't think Pereira won that fight. Just to be honest with you. A fight like that, I can't be mad about being wrong. Like, it's okay. 29-28 either way wound up being acceptable. It didn't fall my way. I can live with that. It's really only those two, Levitt and Leal. I should have got those right. That bothers me a little bit. Okay. So 8-6, not great. Brings me year to date to 39-12. I doubled my number of losses with that one card. I'm not happy. Again, my goal is to get 400 correct predictions this year. And that's doable. I just got to average 10 correct per card, which is not easy nor a given, but I think is doable. And yeah, last night was that not great. Need to do better next time. So that's where we are as far as that goes. As far as the individual fights, let's get into this one then. So in your main event, Sean Strickland over delivers in a lot of respects, defeats Anthony Hernandez. Why are you like this? Fine, go over there. Sean Strickland defeats Anthony Hernandez via TKO, knee to the body, then punches at 2:33 of the third round. This is the first stoppage win for Strickland in what? A couple of years at this point? Maybe more than that. Hang on. So Strickland, Magomedov when he beat Abus in 23, July of 23. So 2.5 years, give or take. So the last one before that. That's about his average. Good grief. He gets about one every 2 years. Oh, that's funny. So if we backtrack this for just a second, so he TKOs Nordine Taleb. This is his last fight at welterweight in 2018. Then he moves up to middleweight, beats Jack Marshman via decision, beats Brendan Allen. He TKOs Brendan Allen in 2020. Then he gets a long break from getting a finish. He fights pretty actively through 21 and 22 because his next finish is over the aforementioned one over Abus Magomedov in 23. So November of 2020 to July of 23. So yeah, 2.5 years ish. And then he doesn't get another stoppage until this one, February of 26. So 2.5 years on average between Sean Strickland finishes. He was due. He was just due a finish, statistically speaking. That's funny. Really, really good performance by Strickland here. This felt like, I think, the very best version of Sean Strickland's game. This was the kind of high point of what he's capable of. Like, if you told me to build the ideal version of what Sean Strickland's skill set and sort of general fighting philosophy leads to, it would look like this. This was really good. Jab, active and early as usual, but more importantly, a willingness to get the right hand involved. He's been kind of a jab merchant for several fights, and that's fine. Jab's an important punch, but a jab really only works when it builds to something. It's a little bit like leg kicks. Like, there's reasons to throw them, but if your big goal is I'm going to stop someone with leg kicks, that's iffy. If your big goal is I'm going to stop somebody with my jab, that's hard to do. That's really hard to do, especially against anyone who's any good. But it's an important building block to get to what you want to get to. You throw the jab, followed up with the right hand, and he did early. He was actually building 1-2s into his offensive rhythm, and it was a nice change of pace for him. Strickland also tends to do a little bit better when he's the one avoiding pressure. It's not that he can't fight going forward. It just changes a lot of how his game works. When he's going forward, he can't kick. Can't's a strong word, but most of his kicking game is teeps, which is fine. He's one of the few guys in MMA who actually really uses them properly. But using a teep going forward is really hard because you constantly are overextending yourself forward. Your hips are going forward, your body's going back, and then you have to come down awkwardly. So again, not that you can't, but it's harder. And he tends not to keep a whole lot while moving forward, unless it's like front kicking and marching to change stances. And when going forward, he tends to get hit a little bit more. It's not a lot, but if you look at his worst losses, it's been guys getting him when he's coming forward, guys who make him follow, make him pursue. That's where Poatan got him. That was a big component of how DDP beat him in their second fight very decisively. There's a lot of stuff that went into that apparently, but like just fundamentally, in their first fight, he does a fair amount of pursuing of Sean and kind of gets jabbed up as a consequence. The second fight, he makes Strickland do a lot of the pursuing and counters him, neutralizes some of his offense. It just does a lot better overall. And here you've got a guy who's just going to come into you with Anthony Hernandez. He's just going to walk at you. Like that's kind of his bread and butter is just pace, pressure, and wearing you down. And Strickland just was really well prepared to deflect punches, absorb pressure. Anytime he actually got to the fence, throw a strong front kick, and then peel out. Never be static against the fence because that's where Hernandez really gets you. So that was a good read. Again, jabs and 1-2s. He also does this weird thing when he peels out, and it could get him caught, but it's a choice you kind of have to make. If he's going to peel out, he doesn't just land the jab. It's jab, but as he jabs, his lead leg, the left leg in his case, steps back, so he's almost square. So he goes from slightly more bladed. He's a little bit square anyway, but he goes from so this would be totally square, like my shoulders here. Fights a little bit more here. When he goes to peel out, it's jab and step back with his left leg, so he comes back more square, and that gives him good lateral mobility to circle around. The problem is it kind of opens up this side of your head a little bit. He tends to get hit more with the left because his right hand goes out to deflect and parry. But if he's going to be circling this way, that reset gives him good mobility, but he's got to be good about the distance. Otherwise, a right hand comes. But the step back also creates a little bit of distance. It's why once Hernandez kind of got a feel for that, he would throw the right hand a lot trying to catch Strickland, but the distance was always just a bit off, or Strickland disrupts the space and punching lanes with his shoulders or his arms like he usually does. So that was some good stuff from him. First round's a little bit back and forth. Second round, Strickland starts taking over. His clinch work was actually, I need to give Strickland credit here. A lot of guys get kind of drowned by Fluffy in the clinch. Strickland was very, very cognizant of what to do there. Very good about not letting Hernandez really get his hands locked. Anytime I got towards that, framing, pushing, pummel, spin off the cage. He's very, very competent as a grappler, both on the mat and on the feet. He just doesn't fight there a whole lot because, I don't know, he just doesn't. It's a choice he makes, but you'd be mistaken to assume that he can't do it because he chooses not to. Those aren't the same thing. So Fluffy couldn't get his clinch game going. Couldn't really get Sean down. And then couldn't land a lot of, it's hard to land consistent offense on Strickland anyway. There was just no offensive avenue for Hernandez to pursue. And then in a little bit of desperation, a little bit of frustration, he starts to get a little bit more open, gets a little bit more wild with his offense. Comes forward a little bit more predictably, swings a little bit wider, and walks into a knee right to the solar plexus. And one of the nice things about the front kick is you start the same motion with a knee. Like the knee comes up, and then if you're throwing a front kick, you extend from the knee. Whether you're doing a thrust or snap version, kind of just depends on what you want to do, but that first motion is the same. And if you're worried about somebody coming in, you just don't complete the secondary motion. You just throw the knee. And Hernandez has been a little bit soft to the body for a while. Never folds over the first time you touch it, but I don't know if it's a lack of when I say core discipline, I mean literally keeping your core tight the whole time you're engaging, or something similar. But I think he just got surprised by this too, because Strickland's not much of a body puncher in general. He'll throw kicks, but not much of a body puncher. And getting in close, I just don't think he expected the knee. And it hurt him, and Strickland just backed him into the fence, unloaded, got the stoppage. Really, really solid win for Sean Strickland. Hard to say it's his best when the man beat Izzy clean, but it needs to be said again a couple of things. I think this is like the best version of his game. What he does well really stood out here. Good cardio, good striking defense, good punch, disrupting of punching lanes, good offense. But here, whereas before he'd kind of get stuck like jabbing and front kicking and doing nothing but that, and just like, all right, you're not going to hit me as much as I'm going to hit you, and then I'll get a decision, probably. This was more okay. I can get a little bit more offense going. I can throw the right hand behind the jab. And it kind of bothered Fluffy almost right away. I think he expected a lot more jabs and expected not to deal with that particular kind of offense as early as he had to. And I think it threw him off a little bit. Bit of a lack of cage cutting from Hernandez. Lack of consistent cage cutting, I should specify. He did a lot of following at a certain point. And at other points, you'd see him kind of remember, oh, yeah, I got to cut him off. But a lot of following, and that made Sean's job a lot easier. Anytime you know where the other guy is going to be, that helps you tremendously. So, really good performance out of Sean Strickland here. One of the most complete, again, like the best version of what his style can do and what his skills can do. This is kind of what it looks like. So, really, really good stuff from him as far as that goes. So, give him all the credit. Post-fight, he put over Hernandez, which is nice of him. Then said he wants to fight Chimaev for the belt. That seems unlikely for a couple of reasons. One, it's unclear if Chimaev's going to fight at middleweight again anyway. He's already making noise about moving up to 205 because in the year of our Lord 2026, we just can't have consistent champions in the world of MMA. So that's a little unclear. Also, I maintain, if you want me to, like, who deserves the next title shot, Imavov. I know Strickland beat Imavov, but Imavov deserves the next title shot. Now, the problem is there's a non-trivial chance what we're going to wind up getting is just Imavov versus Strickland for the interim belt. We're going to pretend that's not a possible thing because it seems very, very possible to me. Or Strickland's next fight maybe should be for the belt. That doesn't mean the next title fight on the calendar should involve him. Those are two different things. So Strickland may get the next his next fight may be for the belt, but the next immediate title fight, say it's Chimaev versus Imavov. That doesn't mean Strickland's being overlooked. It just means he wasn't next on the calendar, but he could still fight for the belt in his next fight. So that's definitely a thing. Yeah, and the UFC and CBS got their clickbait provocative guy. Look, I'm happy to give Sean Strickland his flowers about his actual fighting because he's good. He's a very, very difficult guy to beat. And he just, will get on the mic and say a bunch of stuff that will generate traction on, certain websites and to a certain kind of person. But I don't feel the need to. I will say this. Him going on a slur-laden tirade about, the NFL halftime show, which, who cares? But, he decided to use some of his time for that at the pre-fight presser, at the post-fight. And nary a word is said. Then at the post-fight presser, he accuses a fairly well-known MMA coach of contributing to the grooming of Aspen Ladd. And that gets his mic cut off and gets him escorted off the rostrum. let me just throw this out there. Okay. I kind of disagree with a lot of Sean Strickland's like tirades. Not all. And not most of the time, occasionally, he's trying very badly to get at a salient point. But if you're okay with him hurling homophobic slurs, I don't know why you would then decide, no, we can't let you say anything about your concerns over behavior of MMA coaches. Now, let me be very, very clear. I have zero knowledge about anything that he was, implying. Sorry, I would infer anything he's implying. He might know. He might know a lot of the people involved and might have a much more informed take on it than I do. But let me just say this: I don't care what anyone thinks about a Super Bowl halftime show. We haven't had a good one like maybe since Prince. They mostly just suck. Not much you can do about it. So I don't care about his thoughts about that. It doesn't matter to me in the slightest. I'd rather we all left the homophobic slurs where they in the past, because I think, we should be better than that. At a minimum, your vocabulary should be better than that. But something that he does know a little bit more about, something he's been around a lot more, is, the martial arts scene. And I've mentioned this last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago, maybe, when the stuff about Andre Galvao broke. The martial arts community, all kinds of martial arts, traditional, karate, taekwondo, kung fu, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, whatever, any of them. There's a pretty serious problem with abuse of a few different kinds. Now, and again, a lot of people have sort of I wish I could, count on only one hand the number of these things that I've, because the Galvao thing broke, and I kind of went, boy, I've seen a lot of these. It tends to come up more in the jiu-jitsu discussion because that's the one that gets amplified in MMA circles, but it is not at all unique to MMA, not even close. And if Strickland knows something about that and wants to talk about it, that seems much more like a thing that I'd be curious to hear his take on, because that's a thing that, he's been around a lot of gyms and a lot of the martial arts culture. And frankly, if there is weird behavior going on with the people in question, I'd really that's a thing that we should all be aware of, because the martial arts community doesn't do the best job of policing itself about bad behavior. I'll say we, because I'm part of this. We just don't. There's a lot of people who just take advantage. I mean, there's a long list. I mean, I've mentioned this before, but is it the Bullshido guys? The Bullshido YouTube, I think it was, has a compilation video. This is from 3-4 years ago. It's probably longer now. That's just the news story clips of so-and-so local martial arts instructor was arrested for abusing somebody. That's a long compilation video he's got. And we don't do a good enough job policing it internally. So if there's something going on there, yeah, let's, bring it up. Let's talk about it. But no, that gets him cut off. I don't know. You know what? It's also entirely possible that for whatever reason, his previous diatribe got him on the radar. So there was a little bit no, let's just not let him go off again. I don't know. But he got a good win. He got a really good win. So big ups to Sean there. As for Hernandez, tough loss, but this should show him a little bit of the spaces in his game that he needs to work on. It's one thing to have really good cardio, but at a certain point, you can't just throw that at somebody and expect that to be enough. You've got to find ways to appropriately weaponize it. His entries were not great. His transition from punching to grappling, they don't integrate seamlessly. So there's stuff he's got to work on, and this kind of showed that. Like a defensively a defensive wall like Sean Strickland will expose all the holes in your game because everything you relied on doesn't work, or a lot of it doesn't work. Like you've got to be super dialed in and have a few different ideas about what you're going to do to beat that guy. Unless you're just like Poeton and you've got the nuclear option and he just happens to line up in a way that you get to deliver it very consistently. So still think there's a lot of upside to Hernandez. He's only 32. So hopefully he takes the right lessons from this and gets moving. So good main event. You know, I may not have a whole lot of like personal feeling about Sean Strickland as a human being, but watching his style actually realize its potential in a really, really good form like this is a little bit heartening because I like seeing that when anybody does it. You know, whatever my opinion on them, whatever my understanding of their worldview and subsequent opinion happens to be. So, all right. Co-main event. Ooh, this was rough. Uros Medic knocks out Jeff Neal, 119 of the first round. I picked Neal here because I was giving him a little bit of grace. He'd had some rough losses his last few fights, but when your losses come to Shavkat Rakhmonov, Ian Gary, and then Carlos Praches, those are three of the best guys in the division, pretty clearly. I was willing to say, okay, I think you might still have something, and Medic doesn't have great defense. That's still true. Medic's defense is still not great, but Neal might be washed now. Like he got literally the snot knocked out of him. Medic hits this really nice left hook. They're both southpaw. Gets him right on the temple. He drops and like again as he hits the ground, something about the force and like the air being knocked out just sends these snot rockets out of his nose. Heck of a time to come into the stream if you happen to just come into that one. Yeah, Neal might be done more or less. Because he didn't look great here, one way or the other, and that was a rough loss. Medic, you know, dude's kind of been figuring it out lately, so God bless. He wants to fight. He called out Leon Edwards. That's not as crazy as you might think, given that Edwards is on a real rough stretch. Not crazy. I don't think the most likely fight for him next, but I don't think it was an unreasonable call out. We had a few wild ones. So good win for Medic. I don't know what they're gonna do with Jeff Neal. I think he might just be past it. So and he's kind of a what if. Like there was a lot of skill there, and then for any number of reasons, it just never quite fully reached his potential. So featherweight next. Melquiades Costa defeated Dan Ige via spinning back kick to the head and punches 456 of the first. Yeah, Melky Costa's a beast. Like that dude is long, fights mean. He's another one of these guys, kind of like Yair Rodriguez or Chidi Njokuani. We'll get to him more in specific in a minute or two. But there's some guys who you watch them fight and just everything looks like it hurts. Just everything hurts. Everything is just like hard edges, angles, and bone just slamming into you. Costa's one of those guys. Ige struggled to really navigate kicking distance a little bit early, but after that, he never maintained it and just kind of got chewed up a bit. Then, oof, that last one, man, dude, if you're able to land a spinning back kick to the head opposite stance, that takes some skill. Ige wasn't thrilled with the stoppage, but I get that he wasn't unconscious, but he was just on his back covering up. And that shows you're not unconscious, but you then have to like actually defend, not just cover up. And he was trying to ride out the round with a little bit too much time left in it. Like 4 or 5 more seconds of just Costa continuing to drop hammer fists and punches on him was just not good. So I was okay with the stoppage. Yeah, Costa, this was his 5th win in a like 360, not in a like January to December calendar year, but in a 365-day calendar. He got 5 wins. That's hard to do, and he did it against escalating levels of opposition, and he looked good in each of them. There's none of those that he just like eked by. So, real good win for him. He called out Diego Lopez. That seemed like a bridge too far for me. Lopez just fought for the belt again, undeserved, but I don't think they're going to make him fight a guy who is maybe barely going to be in the top 10. I appreciate the call out, but that seems unlikely. I still think they're going to try and do like, they should still do like Lopez and Rodriguez, because that's got some heat. But Costa's definitely do another step up after this, because dude, you knock out Dan Ige, that's a heck of a thing to accomplish. So good on Costa. One of the rising guys in that weight class, and definitely not someone you should sleep on. He's good. He's real good. Heavyweights next. Sergey Spivak defeated Ante Delia via unanimous decision to 30-27 and 229-28. That 30-27 is terrible. I don't know how you give Spivak the second round. I mean, you even had Aaron Bronstetter say that's an undefensible scorecard. And that takes a lot to do. Like, that dude is pretty mellow most of the time. This was just a bunch of jabs between heavyweights. This division sucks for any number of reasons. But yeah, Delia, he's got to fix some stuff. And Spivak, I'll give Spivak a little bit of credit. Did a little bit of the dipping jab instead of just standing there and trading with his head straight up in the air. So thumbs up. But yeah, heavyweight sucks. Welterweight, oof, this one hurt. Like, oof, bad knockout. Jacoby Smith knocks out Josiah Harrell, punches from mounted crucifix in 301 of the first. Harrell took this on short notice. Tough fight for him. Like, Jacoby Smith is like a very, very good athlete, a very, very good wrestler. He hit a really nice takedown, Jacoby Smith. When you watch guys who really know how to wrestle, and I don't mean like I know how to wrestle in an MMA gym, I mean really know how to wrestle. And Jacoby Smith was like Division I, very, very good. He might have been a champion, at a minimum an All-American, if memory serves. He had a really nice takedown, and I want to give Harrell credit. He had a really nice octopus guard get up. They tied up again, and Harrell gets kind of a body lock, gets a takedown, and Smith, as soon as his shoulders hit, he like kicks his feet straight up in the air and rotates and comes out on top in side control. Really nice. It's very athletic, but there's a lot of skill there too. Very nice counter. And once he gets on top there, he just punches to the face of Harrell until he's out. Late stoppage by the ref, and Smith threw at least one punch after the ref was touching him. That you should have a little bit better discipline than that. It was a bad knockout, man. Harrell was out for a minute. So hopefully he's okay. But Jacoby Smith, like, uber prospect. Super, super talented, super skillful. A lot of good stuff to look forward to there from him. He's about ready to start moving from prospect to actual contender, and that's a big jump. That's a difficult transition to make. And kicking off the main card, Michel Pereira defeated Zachary Reese via split decision. This fight kind of sucked. I thought Reese won, marred by a couple of fouls, some of which were dubious. At least one of those groin shots that Pereira was complaining about, I think he might have milked at least one of those. Yeah, fight wasn't great. Don't know what else to tell you. So that was the main card. A lot of this card was not great. That was your main card. On the prelims, Carlos Leal defeated Chidi Njokuani via unanimous decision, 30-27, 229-28. This was okay. A lot of forward pressure from Leal. Chidi Njokuani is a dynamic kicker. I mean, so was his brother. I remember when his brother was fighting in the WEC. So Chidi does a lot of like inside leg kicks with the lead leg, then an outside leg kick, then a body kick, then up and down rapid fire kicks is a big part of his game. And Leal just pretty consistently was able to get through kicking distance and up and down punches, body to head stuff. again, this was a fun little fight. Nothing great, but a fun little one. Solid enough win for Leal. Njokuani, I think, may have hit his ceiling. Like, there's ability there, but there's some like limiter. I don't know what exactly is stopping him there. There's a few things that can contribute to it, but he's definitely missing some kind of component to really elevate and accelerate his game. Alibi Idris defeated O'Day Osborne via unanimous decision, 129-28, 230-27s. Pretty standard flyweight fight. Nothing super major there. O'Day Osborne is just a guy. And Idris really needs some more like danger to his offense at this level because he doesn't have that. Also at flyweight, Alden Correa defeated Luis Gurule via unanimous decision, 30-27 across the boards. Real solid, fundamental, start to finish professional performance from Correa. He trains with Joshua Van. He doesn't have like the explosivity or the big finishing power, but Correa is a really, really sound, really, really difficult fighter to handle. Definitely looking forward to more of what he can do. Jocelyn Edwards defeated Nora Conol via rear naked choke, technically, 244 the second. This was rough for a number of reasons. Conol is actually doing fairly well early. Anytime they clinch up, she's got good knees and elbows going. But second round, Edwards is able to get to the back and gets a mat return where she kind of just lifts and then we come down. But Conol came down just on her right shoulder, just like everything onto that, and was hurt by that. I think the shock of pain and a little bit of the head bounce, and the ref should have stepped in right then and just waved it off because Edwards like starts throwing punches and there's no real response from Conol. Then she kind of starts moving and Edwards is like, fine, I'll choke you out, basically. And then as soon as that's done, like Conol is just down on the ground in the fetal position, clutching at her shoulder in agony. I mean, like couldn't get up. Barely could get to the stool by the time they were reading out the final decision. I mean, just and any of that stuff, man, especially if it's like collarbone breaks are incredibly painful. Shoulder might have been like there's a lot of stuff in there that could have gone wrong. I don't think we've had much of an update on that yet, probably for tomorrow, but really, really rough. And those can really mess you up too. Like certain like shoulder or collarbone injuries can end your career, depending on again severity and a few other like variables. But so hopefully she recovers. Wasn't a great fight apart from that, and again the ref botching the ending. Just don't know what we were doing there. Punahele Soriano defeated Ramiz Brahimai via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. Fun little fight, nothing special. Welterweight Jean-Paul Lebosnoyani, excuse me, I mispronounced that, defeated Phil Rowe via split decision, 29-28. Phil Rowe he took this on short notice. He has some ability, but man, that guy just never seems to get out of the blocks. Not super impressed with Lebosnoyani. Not bad, not at all bad, but I don't know, just seemed a little raw. Enthusiastic, and you can see the materials there, but definitely needs a lot more work and refinement. It looked green in a lot of respects. At featherweight, Jordan Levitt defeated Yadier Del Valle via unanimous decision, 29-28. Telling that the big response after this was, yeah, Isaac Dulgarian really did throw their fight, because if Jordan Levitt can out wrestle and out grapple you for 2 rounds, Isaac Dulgarian should have been able to do so easily, which is true. Dulgarian's a much better MMA wrestler than Jordan Levitt. So, but Levitt at featherweight actually looked pretty good. Didn't look too drained. Filled out. Again, good overall grappling. Some nice sweeps, some decent ground and pound. Could use some work on that still. Also, just inviting people to try to kick him at different points to get the takedown. Again, not a bad little fight. Featherweight might suit Levitt a little bit more than lightweight did. So I'm curious to see where he goes from there. Del Valle still probably has some decent upside, but one of the other reasons I should not have picked him here was knowing what we now suspect about the Bulgarian fight. His performance looks worse. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that he should have been able to do better, especially against the guy who's like kind of giving away the fight, or seems to be giving away the fight. So, a few things there. Like, that one I'm bothered that I got wrong. So, and then kicking everything off, Carly Judice defeated Juliana Miller via unanimous decision, 229-28 and a 30-27. Judy's just better. Miller's got good grappling, but her takedowns aren't great. She was doing the Jacare thing, like get to the back, kind of put one hook in, sort of the cheese donkey position, or broomstick, if you prefer that terminology, and then the other leg kicks off the fence to push things down. Again, Jacare Souza did that a few different times, was really cool. But not a whole lot beyond that. She had one good choke attempt in the third, but could never get it working. And Judice, just one of the few like rising bright spots in the women's flyweight division, which is again kind of bereft at the moment. So yeah, 14 fights. That was a lot. And especially for a really, really pedestrian preliminary card. I actually had a modicum of hope for this card when it was announced, and turns out that if you didn't see everything, if you want my recommendations, Strickland and Hernandez was good for what it was. Especially like if you want to see Strickland's game sort of firing on all cylinders, this is what it looks like. Medic and Neal wasn't long, so give that a view. Costa and Ige was good. After that, again, the Smith and Harrell fight, it has a few fun parts, and then Leal and Ninja Kawani, I think it's probably worth a look. Other than that, no, there's not a lot here. So there was a lot of just like chaff for this event. And boy, that prelim stretch was I'm not some noob. I've been doing this for a while now, and I've got a pretty good ability to stay focused and keep my constitution about me. Bit of a struggle by the time that one was done. So full report as usual in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com. So go give that a read. Check out clips of the finishes if you feel so inclined. Always appreciate that. Anything you guys can do to support my work in that regard is, again, of course, deeply, deeply appreciated. All right, let's move on to UFC Fight Night 268. We will be in Arena Mexico. No, sorry, Arena CDMX. Well, we might not. Let me just throw this out there before we get into the fights. With what just started kicking off in Mexico, I'm unsure if we're actually going to get this card in that particular location this coming Saturday. So we will keep an eye on that. But for those of you who don't know, one of the cartel heads was killed. And if I may opine, I'm not going to lose any sleep over that. But a lot of the other cartels are now like trying to exact reprisals and want to be paid off again by the government. And places in Mexico are pretty gnarly right now. Some places are pretty bad, apparently. So, oof. So we'll see. I don't think any of the area around Mexico City has had problems, but we got a whole week. Who the heck knows? Like, that could get real bad. In which case, they'll just throw this in the Apex and call it good because that's what they do. But anyway, that's where we are with that. So figured I'd throw that out there. Like, yeah, Mexico kind of, some stuff in there kind of touched off. So we'll see if we actually keep that venue. All right, main event for this particular card, Brandon Moreno versus Lonnie Kavanagh. This was supposed to be Moreno and Asu Almabayev. Almabayev fell out for whatever reason. Lonnie Kavanagh steps in. I have a lot of respect for Kavanagh stepping in here, but dude's coming off of a loss to Charles Johnson where he gassed pretty visibly, and that's kind of what let Johnson get to him. Now, Charles Johnson at flyweight is kind of like Michael Johnson at lightweight. He's going to be around the 500 mark for the majority of his time in the UFC, but the best version of him gives literally everyone in that division problems and could beat pretty much anyone. He just struggles to bring the best version of himself consistently to the fight. But if you're gassing out against Charles Johnson at, where was that? I want to say it was Vegas. Oh, no, it was Shanghai, China. Okay. Dude, if you're gassing out there, fighting Moreno at the altitude of Mexico City on short notice is a big ask. A real big ask. So I am not fond of his chances here. I don't think even under ideal circumstances I would pick him at this point. Moreno might have a little bit of, a fair number of miles on him where we are, but I need a pretty good reason to pick against him here, and I don't have it, so I'm going with Moreno. He's the favorite. Yeah, he's the favorite. Yeah, that's about right. Minus 240, somewhere in that range. But that'll probably be a decent fight. Brandon Moreno fights are very rarely bad. Even the ones that aren't, great are at least watchable. Co-main event, this is a dicey one. Marlon Chito Vera and David Martinez. Poor Chito. I heard Jack Slack describe him thusly, and it's never left my head. Marlon Vera is the kind of guy who part of his training is to run like 10 miles a day to really work his cardio. And then he fights like he's terrified of gassing out, so he never uses it. I mean, it's one thing to fight like you're scared of gassing out if there's a real good chance you're going to gas out. If you're, in good shape and you make a point of being in good shape, you got to use that. Martinez on a pretty decent winning streak. He hasn't lost since 21. Had a good run through Combate Global. Two wins in the UFC, wins over Simon Oliveira and Rob Font. That Rob Font win was pretty good, actually. They like Martinez. He's young. He's good looking. He's got a good story. He is native Mexican, right? Yeah, he is. They're kind of trying to give him a boost here, and Vera's a good choice for that because Vera's still a reputable name, but he's on a 3-fight losing streak. I kind of thought he beat Amin Zahabi, if memory serves. But yeah, I would need a pretty serious. This is a bit of a step up, technically speaking. Vera, I think, is a little bit of a higher achiever relative to Rob Font, or again, the higher peaks. Font's probably a bit more consistent. But this seems very, very winnable for. I mean, Vera's also. He's only 33, but I'll look at something here with Vera. Yeah, he's had 35 fights. That's a lot. And he's been in the UFC for a while. Jeez, when was? Yeah, his UFC debut was in 2014. He lost to Marco Beltran. So, dude's been in the UFC for like 12 years. When was that? November of 14? Okay. So he just passed 11. That's a long time to be in the UFC. And he's had that dude's been in the trenches in different points. Like, he's had some knockdown, drag out affairs. So, again, they're kind of trying to gas up David Martinez. Marlon Vera is a solid enough choice to do that. Out of curiosity, let me check the odds. Yeah. I mean, I was going to go with Martinez anyway. The odds have him just about minus 300. But again, watch this be one of the ones that Chito pulls out because he is just like that. The dude will bust up your parlays one way or the other. Lightweights, Daniel Zellhuber and King Green. Speaking of guys with not a lot of tread left on the tires, it seems like. King Green's almost my age. In fact, when will he? Okay, so this year, King Green will turn 40. I'm going to tell you exactly how old I am for the sake of not just saying my age on the internet, but it's gotten to the point where guys close to my age are about ready to start seriously dropping off. Take from that what you will. Green's also had a lot. He's had 52 fights. I mean, good grief. Dude, he fought like Bodog. Didn't he? Hang on. Total fighting. He fought an Affliction. Dude, he fought an Affliction. King of the Cage. Yeah. Not Bodog, but dude, you fought like Affliction and King of the Cage. You're an old head. He's good grief. How long has he been with the UFC? Since February of 13. February 2nd of 13. He is literally at the 13-year mark. He's over the 13-year mark, and he's in his 14th year in the UFC. Good grief. And he's had some losing streaks and whatnot too. Most recently, he beat Lance Gibson Jr. at a catchweight. It was an okay fight. Shouldn't have been split. He should have won that outright. His two losses before that were to Paddy Pimblett and Mauricio Hufi. So again, I don't think like there's. I do think it's okay to say that there's like. Sorry, my cat is like spazzing out over there. I think it's okay to say that like that dude, bless him for the career, but that mileage has to be adding up at this point. And then Zellhuber's kind of the opposite. He's only 20. He's only 26. He's a big lightweight too, 6'1", 77 inches of reach. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. Lost that fight of the night. I think it was fight of the year for 24 against Esteban Dubovic. Then lost to Michael Johnson, so he needs a rebound. Another one of those guys who might have got to the UFC too early. Because Zellhuber gets to the UFC courtesy of the Contender Series in 22. So he was, only 22 years old, give or take. Not a lot of fights under his belt. If you knock off his UFC record is 3, and so if you knock 6 fights, 12 fights, give or take. Might have got here a little too soon. But that does mean he can make some big advances in his game, whereas King Green's kind of a known quantity at this point. I'm just going to go with the odds here. I would not like those odds. Zellhuber is listed as a fairly significant favorite. I would not be that confident. I mean, I'm okay picking him, but dude, you put King Green at that big of a payout at your own peril. Like, he's still dangerous. Flyweights next: Edgar Chairez and Felipe Bunes. Edgar Chairez has good fights. Bunes does not have a wiki entry, so over to Tapology we go. Bunes 14-8. Oh yeah, he's got the weird. He's one of those weird hat guys. I say that with love, by the way. 1-2 in the UFC, lost to Joshua Van Ono, and most recently Rafael Estevam. Yeah. Bunes is fun, but I think Chairez is actually pretty good. So I think we're going to go with Chairez here. What are the odds? Where are you? No, not there. Might be down there. There you are. Yeah, the odds are with Chairez. I'm okay with that. Again, I think Chairez is actually pretty good. So I'm always happy to watch one of his fights. Flyweights again next. We have Imanol Rodriguez and Kevin Borjas. Rodriguez. We have a Mexican and a Peruvian fighting. So Imanol Rodriguez is 6-0. This is his UFC debut. Coming off a Contender Series win. He lost on The Ultimate Fighter. Some stupid season. I don't care about that. It's exhibition. It doesn't matter. To Joseph Morales. Morales went on to win that, if memory serves. So he got in via the Contender Series. Okay. Borjas has been really up and down. 10-4. 1-3 in the UFC. Lost to Josh Van, Alessandro Costa, and most recently Sumu Darji. In the middle of that, he's going to win over Rolando Rodriguez. They're kind of setting up Rodriguez here, and I have no problem going along with that. Over there. That's a G, not a B. Rodriguez. What are the odds? Curiosity. Where are you? There you are. Yeah, the odds like Rodriguez too. I'm okay with that. Check over there. Okay. Bantamweight, we have Santiago Luna and Angel Pacheco. So Luna undefeated, 7-0. His name is Border Boy. Okay. Actually did have a UFC win over Kwong Lee. I remember that. I picked Lee for that fight and felt very, very stupid. Okay. So Luna's the guy they've got big hopes for. Yeah, he has the cowboy hat. Pacheco is, I think, just a guy. 7-3, like 0-1 in the UFC. Yeah, he lost on the Contender Series to Danny Silva. Fought Cowan Loughran on short notice, if memory serves, in 24. So he's been off for almost 2 years. 11, just under a month under 2 years, so 23 months. Yeah, the writing's not too hard to see on the wall there, everybody. That's a pretty easy pick for Luna. If I can type properly. How big are the odds on that one? Yeah, they're pretty big. Not the biggest on the card. Who's the biggest favorite, it looks like, at the moment? Quinones? Yeah, anyone over Chris Moutinho, that tracks. Yeah, something like that. Okay. Sorry, that was just an idle bit of curiosity. And that's our main card. On the prelims at middleweight, we have Ryan Gandra and Jose Daniel Medina. Let's see. So Medina is Bolivian. I'm not used to seeing the coat of arms in the middle of the Bolivian flag. I know it's always been there, but I tend to see it not with that in there. So Medina's 11-6, 0-4 in the UFC, 0-3. Yeah, dude, I know that. Yeah, this guy just is kind of there to be a heavy bag. He walks forward. He will force action, but he just kind of gets beat up. Gondra is 8-1, so this is high in Gondra. 7-fight winning streak. This is UFC debut off a Contender Series win. Once again, tea leaves not too hard to read here. So we'll go with Gondra. Okay, next up. Eileen Perez and Macy Chasson. What a weird fight. Chasson is one of those fighters who, like, I think her best is very, very good. But another fighter that just really, really struggles to, like, consistently get the best out of herself. 2-fight losing streak, losses to Ketlin Vieira and Yana Santos. She missed weight for the Santos fight. She's missed weight a couple of times at bantamweight. She missed weight at featherweight once. Jeez. I forgot that. I think this is Perez. Perez is actually on a good winning streak, actually. She missed weight for the fight with Daria Zhlezniakova, but she's on a 5-fight winning streak. Yeah, that's respectable. Yeah, she might be more like rising, whereas Chasson is just kind of like plateaued. I think the odds are a little bit with Perez, right? Yeah. Let me check. I'm going to reserve the right to change my mind on this one. There's a few things I got to see about that matchup in particular, so bear with me on that one. Bantamweight, Christian Quinones and Chris Moutinho. Chris Moutinho is just not very good. And I have no problem going with Quinones. Just out of curiosity, I've seen Quinones, right? Man, there's like 3 guys on this card with the nickname Problema. Wait a minute, Quinones is 1-2 in the UFC. Hang on, he beat Khalid Taha, lost to Kyung Ho Kong, and lost to Hani Barcelos. He's been out since February of 24. Okay, hang on. Moutinho's not good, is like the biggest thing here. I don't know if Quinones is like all that good, but I know Moutinho is not very good. I mean, Moutinho, what, 14-7? Across 2 stints in the UFC, he's 0-3. Like, I wouldn't feel comfortable with big odds, just given the volatility of everyone involved, but yeah, I'm okay picking Quinones. Douglas Silva de Andrade, still out here doing it. God bless him. Dude, Douglas Silva de Andrade is one of those guys who's been around forever. He's 40. His UFC debut came in 2014, losing effort against Zubaira Tukhugov. His professional debut was in 2007. He's almost got 20 years in the sport. Good grief. He's coming off a loss to Miles Johns in June of 24, so he missed all of 25. He's kind of just been a little bit up and down for the last little bit. Again, I'm just impressed that he's still out there doing it. And for a 40-year-old man, he looks carved out of stone if you care about that kind of thing. Javier Reyes is Colombian, 22-5. Coming off a Contender Series win over Justice Torres. Dude, D Silva's a rough UFC debut. Just gonna throw that out there. Like you fight Douglas Silva de Andrade for a UFC debut. That is not a soft entry. That's not a soft landing into the UFC by any stretch of the imagination. Reyes is also, how old is he? 32. Okay, so he's not a young kid. Still, like 8 years of difference is a bit, and the gap. But I'm of the opinion that like the gap between, like, not all 8-year age gaps are created equal. The gap between 32 and 40 is significant. Maybe even more so than like 32 to 26. That's a big gap too. But like 40 is a different level of like drop off to 32 than other increments of 8. That's still a rough entry though. Like if you want to look for an underdog to pick, like Silva de Andrade is I imagine a fairly live dog in that particular respect. So I'm gonna go with Reyes, but let me asterisk this one too. I don't know why, but something about that one is like, take a second. So I'm gonna look at a few other things for that one down the stretch as we get closer to the fight. Okay, women's flyweight, Sofia Montenegro and Ernesta Carrascate. So Montenegro is Argentinian, 6-2. Lost on the Contender Series via split decision, but got into the UFC anyway because the Contender Series has no standards, apart from do things that Dana White likes. And Carrascate, 6-1-1. Endless cardio on this woman. Like she came from a swimming background, so like fatiguing her is going to take some effort. 1-1. Yeah, when she beat Nicole Cagliari, it was kind of via that. Like Cagliari just faded badly, and Carrascate just kept coming. That was January of last year. She's been out for a year. I I don't know enough about Montenegro. Quick look at the odds. The odds like Karascate. I'll respect that. There's a couple of national naming schemes that have just become the bane of my existence, kind of for trying to intuit how to pronounce and intuit how to spell the pronunciation. Lithuanians are rapidly climbing that list. I say that with all due respect to Lithuanians. And really, if I can get a generalized, decent ability to guessing game at Polish, I should be okay getting there with Lithuanians, but I just haven't had a lot of exposure. I have a little bit of exposure to that, so still working on that one, but man, that's say this in favor of the Lithuanian naming convention. They may be long. They don't rely on a random accent to add letters and other phonetic sounds into their namings, into the naming conventions. So, but yeah, that one gets a little bit annoying. Alrighty. Only two more. Featherweight Eric Silva and Francis Marshall. So Silva 9-3, Ecuadorian. No, Venezuelan. Yeah, the other one. Yeah, Venezuelan. 9-3. 0-2 in the UFC. Yeah, losses to TJ Brown and Muhammad Naimov. That's not great. I mean, they're both pretty good, but that's not great. Marshall 8-3. 2-3 in the UFC. Has a win over Marcelo Rojo. Lost 2 to William Gomez and Isaac Dolgarian. Beat Dennis Bazukia. Lost to Myron Santos. Those last two fights were both split decisions. Wasn't super impressed. He's been out since March of last year, so a bit of a layoff for him. He was supposed to fight Austin Bashi in August of last year, so okay. It was Bashi who pulled out of that fight, if memory serves. Kind of feels like a Marshall fight. Yeah, let's go with Marshall. The odds. What are the odds? Yeah, odds are really with Marshall. Okay. Geez, am I just picking favorites? I kind of have, so I haven't had a real compelling reason to change my mind yet. Kicking everything off, we have Damian Pinas and Pines? There's got to be an accent there, maybe somewhere. And Wesley Schultz. I assure you, I am not referencing genitalia. He's from Aruba. There's gonna be a weird pronunciation for that. I don't know what exactly it is, but the Aruban accent is a little bit different. Okay, so he's 8-1. This is his UFC debut. Coming off a Contender Series win. He might be the first Aruban fighter in UFC history. Good for him. And Schultz is 8-2. Also coming into the UFC off a Contender Series win. He lost on his first Contender Series fight to Mansour Abdul Malik. That's not Malik, it's Malik. I always forget how he prefers the emphasis be placed in that. Coming off a win over Mario Minaj. 8-2 versus 8-1. You got a couple of very, very up and coming guys. Odds are with I'm going to go with Pinas in an effort to not, say anything too weird. But I'm literally just going with the odds on this one right now. So, you know what? I'm going to reserve the right to just go with the favorite come fight night. So, barring something weird that I happen to, see when they stand next to each other or something. So that one I'm going to reserve the right to be a little bit more judicious on as we get closer. And that is the card. So Saturday in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com. How many fights do we got? I have a spreadsheet. This shouldn't be too hard. Got another 14 fight card. Jeez. So wait, this might be only 13. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, 13. That's still more than I like, but it's more acceptable. Anyway, Saturday, MMAZone411mania.com. Stop by, say hello. I will have live coverage over there, and I hope you'll all, again, stop by and say hello. That's always appreciated. Much like I appreciate any and all of you who are following along live. We've had a few people in and out, so God bless. Feel free to, again, give the stream a thumbs up, leave a comment. I'm happy to interact with you guys on that front if anyone does. And if you're watching after the fact, same thing. Feel free to leave a comment. You can find me on X. I'm at Winfrey MMA. All the, good place. That's the easiest way to kind of sort of keep track of me. And let's move on. So the big news of last week came out of nowhere. But MVP, this is the Jake Paul's promotion, will be promoting. I think my camera lost focus there. So I get it back. Will be promoting Gina Carano versus Ronda Rousey on Netflix later this year. Didn't see that one coming, but a lot of people have mentioned it. Ronda's done a little bit of like talking with a few higher profile podcasters and whatnot. And she said that she kind of brought this to Dana last year. And this may, in fact, you guys remember the start of 2025 when Dana White said, I'm working on something that you'll never believe? This just kind of fell into my lap. And I'm still trying to get this to. That I think looks a little bit better. Might have been this one. And then the change in structure, the death of pay-per-view, and Ronda wanted better compensation if she was going to be on pay-per-view. If she wasn't going to be on pay-per-view, the UFC wasn't all that interested, and well, here we are. So now Jake Paul's promotional entity will be doing that. I don't know what to think about this one. It's on Netflix, so it's going to be big. Like, people will just watch this because Netflix doesn't do a lot of like MMA or boxing events because they're not interested in. I mean, the UFC's talked about this. Like, the reason the UFC and Netflix thing didn't work out is Netflix didn't want their week-to-week slop. They got plenty of slop over there at Netflix. They don't need more. They need what they want in the sporting event realm is premier stuff. And you might say, but they did, Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. How is that premier boxing? Well, it doesn't represent a high level of boxing, but it certainly represents big attention-getting stuff. And look, guys, the card last week, the card yesterday, the card coming up for the UFC, like, what about that grabs your attention if you're on Netflix and you have everything they offer at your disposal? Nothing about that grabs attention. This will grab attention. Ronda Rousey Conor became a bigger star, but Ronda's penetration into like the pop culture zeitgeist was bigger. Man, if you weren't around for Ronda's heyday, Ronda Rousey was like on Ellen DeGeneres before Ellen's career imploded. She was on the Today Show back when that was still kind of a relevant thing. Like, she got into places other MMA fighters didn't get and still don't. No, dude, Sean Strickland or Khamzat Chimaev or Poatan or any of them. Like, they're not going on these bigger mainstream kind of outlets. And that was Ronda's sort of claim to fame, was she penetrated that market and she brought in a much wider audience. Conor wound up having like orders of magnitude more overall, like in the combat sports bubble, being a bigger star. But Ronda got people into the sport who would not otherwise have gotten into it. I mean, she's the reason female fighting became a thing in the UFC. Literally her. So I don't know. Now, she's kind of sullied her image a little bit. She reacted very, very badly on her way out the door in the UFC. Her time in professional wrestling was mixed. Some very good stuff, some less than very good stuff. And part of the problem is like her book, her autobiography that she authored or, had ghostwritten, whatever. She talks a lot about like, the lead up to the Nunes fight. It was taking like, her brain's not great. And all the bumps in professional wrestling, it can't have helped it. So under normal circumstances, Ronda would steamroll Gina. And I say that with, all due respect to Gina Carano. Like, she was fighting at a much more underdeveloped time in the sport. And I don't hold that against her. I just say that as a statement of fact. Like, she was one of the first people that kind of got women's MMA to be paid attention to because she was a exciting enough fighter and an attractive woman. And that combination got people's attention. But like the era in which she fought, weight classes were barely a thing in women's MMA. Like, were barely a thing. A lot of the people that like, and she's a larger framed woman. Like, making 145 was not the easiest thing in the world for her. And she fought a lot of women that were, much smaller than her, who had to come up because she couldn't go down, and she was one of the only draws. And they were like fighting with 3-minute rounds. If you look at Gina Carano's career, you can understand why Invicta existed. It still exists technically, but the mission statement of Invicta, the all-female fighting promotion, was to structure and fix women's MMA. We've got same weight classes. We're going to fight 5-minute rounds. We're just going to do women's MMA structurally the same, and we're going to stop the freak shows and the weirdness and the catch weights. And if we're going to do this, we're going to do it professionally, and we're going to do it consistently. That was Invicta's mission statement, because the early days of women's MMA are all over the place. And Gina's that's the era she competed in. And Ronda competed in the more modern era. And Ronda achieved athletically at a higher level across two sports than Gina ever got close to. Ronda started training at a very young age. Gina got into training because she went into a gym with her boyfriend at the time, who was a fighter. I'm pretty sure it was Kit Cope. And she kind of got made fun of by some of the other people there for being out of shape. So she trained to get into shape, which, God bless, trained to get into shape. That's a good thing. But she kind of fell into the fighting aspect of it. So, like, peak for peak, the best version of Ronda, this isn't close. This is not competitive at all. But we are well past the best version of Ronda Rousey, respectfully. I mean, she got jabbed twice hard in the face by Amanda Nunes and turned into the mummy. She's like, reaching, and like don't know what she's doing and just discombobulated. And I get that your first fight back after a few years off from getting violently jabbed up, stuck and moved, and head kicked by Holly Holm, and it's Amanda frickin' Nunes punching you in the face. Like, boy, was that she was not set up for success at all in that respect. But it's still like, if you react badly to some of that, when that goes, it can be real hard to get it back if you ever can. To say nothing of, you've talked openly about your history of concussions, the bunch of them that you got from judo, then all the ones you got from MMA, then all the ones you got from professional wrestling. Like, there's a very real argument that this fight, that you should not be allowed to do this, to the extent that sanctioning bodies actually do their jobs, which they don't. But that's a whole other thing. I mean, for crying out loud, Ronda's mom is on the California State Athletic Commission, like the board for that commission. She's there. And I'm not even saying she shouldn't be there. She's a very good, she's the kind of person you do want in that position as a general rule. But the California State Athletic Commission has also abdicated all of its responsibilities over the last handful of years to just now function as an arm of the Chamber of Commerce rather than as an athletic commission. And they're not unique in that, but they are. California used to be a respectable commission. There was a time. Like, some of them have always been iffy. Texas, Florida in some respects. There've always been places that have been a little bit dubious. And California didn't used to be one of them. The last, 8 years, give or take, they've really gone downhill as far as that goes. And for any number of reasons, again, California politics are a whole other thing. And I know a little bit about them. My grandfather this is my mom's dad, was a California highway patrolman for like 30 years and spent the last chunk of his career in protective services. For those of you who don't know, state level officials get their close quarter protection from the state, from the state. In this case, it's the state. It's the highway patrol. This is true of like every state. So if you see the governor of New York who's doing protection for him, it's him or her. It's the New York Highway Patrol that will be doing that for the most part. And because if you're, highway patrol and you work close quarter protection for the governor of Nebraska or Wyoming or Utah, meh. Kind of meh. If you're close quarter protection for the governor or lieutenant governor of California, that's kind of a big deal because California by itself is like the sixth largest economy in the world. So and my grandfather worked close quarter protection for the lieutenant governor's office. So I got to learn a little bit about California state politics, not a whole lot, but a little bit. And yeah, it's a mess. To say nothing of how downhill it's gone over there over the last handful of years for any number of reasons, but we're not here to talk about that too much. Suffice to say, if someone wants to hold an event like this in California, the pressure on the California State Athletic Commission is going to be, we want the revenue. Rubber stamp it. Not, are you doing your job? Again, like the governor's office and the Chamber of Commerce and the tourism boards and all that crap. How do we get this here? How do we, pump some life into this? When in reality, that is not the job of an athletic commission. You should happily tell the Chamber of Commerce and all the various arms to pound sand, but they don't. Not if they want to keep their seat on the board, they don't, because the governor can simply that'll change state to state, but you get the point. So allegedly, there's more rigorous neurological screening that both of these women are going to have to go through. If that actually holds true, God bless. I think it's at least a start. But look, this is going to be a big deal because Ronda's a big deal for the most part. And Gina has a fan base. But, Ronda hasn't had a fight in like, what? 8, 9. Geez, when was the last time Ronda Rousey had a fight? Because it was her last MMA fight prior to this she's 39, first of all, with a literal lifetime of athletic wear and tear. Her last fight was, December of 16. So 9 years and change. Almost a decade. She's been out of action for almost a full decade. And she looked like crap her last fight. I don't care about any of that. I'm going to just check something because now I need to look at Gina. It's not here. Okay, so that's how long it's been for her. And then for Gina, it's been almost 20, right? Hang on. Yeah, her last fight was the Cyborg loss in 2009. So August of 9. So she's been out of the game 16, 17 years. So between the two of them, you're looking at a combined almost 30 years since they fought. Again, that's if you combine them. And Ronda's 40, again, with a lifetime of wear and tear. Gina's been way out of the loop. She's 43. Like, I don't know what to expect from that fight at all. I mean, at all. Like, what do you do with that? What do you even begin to do? You know, again, with between Ronda's damaged goods and Gina just like being, man, 2009. You know, like, seriously, think about that for a second. Like, Conor McGregor wasn't even a Cage Warriors champion in 2009. I think like Max Holloway hadn't debuted professionally, certainly not in the UFC. It's an entire Hall of Fame career that took place since the last time Gina Carano fought. Time, man, gets all of us. But I have no doubt that between, again, Ronda's kind of pop culture reach, Gina, Gina has a fan base, and frankly, kind of got screwed over by Disney. Some of that she brought on herself. Some of that, I think Disney was way out of line. And I think there's a reason they settled that lawsuit. For whatever that's worth. So it's going to do big numbers on Netflix because it's eye-catching. I don't think this heralds some big entry for MVP into the MMA space. I just don't think there's enough talent or interest to generate a lot of these. I think Netflix might do, 2 fights a year, maybe 3. But outside of the UFC, there's just not a lot of talent. I imagine that the plan here is if Ronda wins, which probably will, to do a Ronda Holly rematch. And I think that goes very badly for Ronda. Went badly the first time. I don't know why the second time would be any different. But that's probably like if you're pitching this, like we got a 2-fight plan. We do Ronda Rousey, Gina Carano. If Ronda wins, which she probably will, all things considered, then we do the rematch the UFC never made. Never mind the ages, never mind how long ago it is. Like this will still do it because, dude, Holly Holm had a pretty big fan base from knocking out Ronda Rousey. Her popularity kind of persisted despite some very uninteresting fights. So I don't know. That's a little bit where we are with that. That's my hunch for the plan, but Netflix is not going to be I don't think Netflix is going to be a regular in the MMA space because this is what happens when you have a monopoly top everything, folks. There's nothing interesting outside of it. And frankly, the UFC is not exactly producing a boatload of interesting fights either. So take that for what it's worth. But we'll keep an eye on that fight as it gets closer, but that's kind of a big deal. So speaking of big deals, let's dovetail into this because this is relevant. So Matchroom fighter, boxer Conor Benn signed to do 1 fight with Zuffa Boxing for it's reported like $15 or $18 million. It was 15. But let's just say 15 for the sake of argument. That's more money than any one fighter in UFC history has made for any one fight. No one has made $10 million or more in a single fight in the UFC ever. Brock might have got close with his UFC 200 fight, potentially. And look, Conor's had some very big events. But again, if you're talking like we're cracking the $15 million mark for 1 fight, I feel extraordinarily confident saying no UFC fighter has ever made that much for 1 fight, ever. There's probably only like 3 guys who have made that for 2 fights. You've probably got to get to 3 minimum stacked together to get to that point. Like this is just boxing money. Conor Benn is not like a $15 million fighter either, for the record. He's an okay fighter, but Dana gets to take something away from Eddie Hearn, and he's overpaying for it. But this is the UFC playbook. They will take something that they will overpay a little bit to try and disrupt the people that they're trying to disrupt. They'll try to sign from the bottom up. and ice everything out while the other guys kind of fall apart because they can just pour endless money into this. The UFC's success in the MMA space is partially a lot of work. It is to a non-trivial degree a function of attrition. Like, for the majority of Pride's existence, it was better than the UFC on almost every level. Better. But it was kind of a mess to promote, and it had a lot of financial entanglements that became problematic, including, ties to the Yakuza. And the UFC just chugged on and it fell apart. That's kind of the model they've done for a long time is, okay, we're going to set up a functional machine while everything else is volatile. And even if what we're producing is not the best, it is consistent and sustainable. That's what they're going to try to do with Zuffa Boxing. This isn't complicated. They're not going to give you the best boxing. Almost ever. They will give you boxing. Some of it will be okay. The Zuffa boxing cards to date have not been good. They haven't been terrible, but they haven't been good. A lot of them have been mismatches. And we get a big knockout. I don't care. Guys, that was how you had to sell MMA originally because you needed a hook. This is boxing. If you're going to try and promote and generate interest in boxing at a medium to high level, you don't need knockouts. You don't need mismatches. You need compelling high-level boxing. At the moment, Zuffa can't offer that, so they offer club fights, basically. Slightly elevated from that, but you go to Zuffa Boxing if you need a tune-up, basically. And that's all they offer. And it's generic, and it's painful, and it's ugly. It's ugly to look at. Like, one of the big things about boxing is the pageantry, the performance, the theater, the color. Everything that Dana White likes to do is stripped of that. It is stripped of personality. It is stripped of individuality. It is stripped of color, pageantry, and presentation. You come out in either black, gray, or white. That's it. And the entire color palette of the UFC warehouse is brutalist industrialism. It's ugly. It's uninteresting. And there's a degree to which the boxing fan base is gonna push back on this. Like, boxing fans do like the pageantry a lot. They like the individuality. And Zuffa Boxing the playbook they're going to run is the same thing they did with the UFC. Here's a couple of guys you might know, and we just try to build the machinery until the name brand is the draw, not anyone associated with it. We're bringing the circus to town. We're bringing the UFC to town. Come see the UFC. Who's fighting? Don't care. It's the UFC. That's what they want with Zuffa Boxing. That's going to be a lot harder to do there, even if they get their, custom-made legislation. That just means they get to ignore some of the rules. It doesn't mean that the market has to follow them. And frankly, if they're going to be this like boring and uninteresting, the market's just going to dry up. It might come back later, but it's just going to dry up in places. Like, there's a lot of discerning boxing fans who would rather watch no boxing than bad boxing. And that's not the case with MMA. MMA has a chunk that is just, I'll watch MMA. Or I would rather watch decently promoted UFC fights, even if they're not very good. That's not the case as much with boxing. There's a bunch of people who will just not watch and be perfectly happy waiting for big fights. Not even big fights, but good fights, MMA, that's not quite the same way the fan base operates, but that's where we are with that. So Conor Benn getting a bigger deal than any UFC champion. No UFC champion is going to make $15 million for a fight this year. I would bet money on that one. When it's all said and done, not Topuria, not Pereira, not whoever you think the biggest, even Conor. Like, they're not going to wind up throwing 15 million total at Conor for a fight. Just, it's not going to happen. And the UFC fighters should be looking at that and paying attention to it. They're not going to say anything about it because nothing is going to galvanize them at this point. If everything that has already come out and has already happened has not galvanized something in the MMA fighters to, do something, Conor Benn getting 15 million is not going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, guys. I'd love it if it were. It would be amusing to me if nothing else, but that's not going to be it. The fighters are just going to do what they've always done. That's where we are. So we will keep an eye on that, of course, but Conor Benn getting one $15 million paycheck for one probably very easy fight at the end of the day in Zuffa. And then, he'll be the Zuffa champion, and he really wants to go fight Ryan Garcia because Ryan Garcia became the WBC champion. And Garcia would beat up Conor Benn because Ryan Garcia is a bit of a head case, but Conor Benn is pedestrian. And Ryan Garcia, when he actually pays attention and stays dedicated, is beatable, but not pedestrian. So, yeah. All right. Let's hit this real fast. So the UFC announced a handful of fights over the last week. The big one, the interesting one, so to speak, was, hang on, I just need to bring that back up. Their return to Canada. They will be back in Canada. They will be in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, the home of Chris Jericho. April 18th, they're going to try and sell out the Canada Life Center, a legitimate venue, with a main event of Gilbert Burns versus Mike Malott. They don't care. Look, Mike Malott is one of the guys like, hey, we're going to try and revitalize the Canadian MMA scene because, boy, has that been in trouble. And he's won his last few fights, okay? But we're propping him up against Gilbert Burns, who is, almost 40 and is on, a 4-fight losing streak? Yeah. Now, again, minor bit of grace to be given to Gilbert Burns here. Those losses are in order. Bilal Muhammad, former champion. Jack Della Maddalena, former champion. Sean Brady, still a fairly top guy, and Michael Morales, maybe the next champion. So he's not losing to scrubs here, but a 4-fight losing streak when you're almost 40 years old. Trying to sell tickets with that guy is going to be tough. As your main event, they're going to try and sell tickets with that. That's ballsy. Dude, WWE is having trouble selling WrestleMania tickets in Vegas because they're overpriced and came back to the same place twice in a row, which is a real not the best idea. Not the best idea at all. So, they just haven't been to, Winnipeg. When was the last time the UFC was in Winnipeg? Okay, the UFC's last time in Winnipeg was for Lawler versus Dos Anjos in 2017. I remember that fight. It's a good performance from RDA, but part of what they're relying on is the UFC hasn't been back in, 9 years. So who cares that it's a nothing card? Just come see the circus. Okay, so what else got it? Main event for a fight night in April as well. On the 25th from the UFC warehouse, we will get Joaquin Buckley versus Sean Brady. Good fight. Appropriate fight, appropriate main event for a fight night even. Sean Brady is lights out on the ground, but has had some issues on the feet. Joaquin Buckley is pretty good on the feet, but has had some issues on the ground. So I'm good fight. Happy with this fight for both guys. Curious to see how it'll go. Solid main event. Wish it wasn't in the warehouse, but I wish everything wasn't in the warehouse. Hello to Jake Mills. So, yeah, thanks for stopping by. Happy to see you. Anything else for that card? Norma Dumont and Yana Santos. Yeah, that could only happen in the Apex. Let's see. We got confirmation for another one. This is the March 14th card. Let's see. Main event of Josh Emmett and Kevin Vallejos. Or Vachejos. He's Argentinian, so he prefers the Vachejos. That's an okay main event. Josh Emmett just still out here getting it done. That dude is very limited at this point, but still dangerous. What do we got else on that card? Amanda Lemos and Jillian Robertson. Okay. Umar Sy and Ivan Kutalaba. That'll suck. Andre Fili and Jose Miguel Delgado. Whatever. Is there anything on there worth caring about? Charles Johnson and Bruno Silva ought to be okay. Bia Mesquita is fighting Montserrat Rendon. That's a fairly easy win for Mesquita, I think. But Mesquita is at least somewhat interesting. Jiu-Jitsu's back. Su Young Yu against Elijah Smith. I got a soft spot for you. That's gonna be a rough card. That's just gonna be a rough card. There's not a lot else on there. Oh wait. Okay. Chris Curtis and Muktabek Oralbai. That'll be something. Oralbai has interesting fights, and I like Chris Curtis, so don't care about Brad Tavares and Eric Anders. Brad Tavares and Eric Anders. Boy, the loser should be just retired. But Curtis and Oralbai will be good. That'll be a good fight. So a couple there, but yeah, that's going to be kind of rough. Okay, so we have a question from Jake here. Do I think UFC cards are getting worse with Paramount, or should we just give it time? Both. I hate to play that card, but it is undeniably true that for a variety of reasons, the quality of the UFC events has dropped. That's not just a unique to Paramount thing. The UFC put forth a good faith effort in 25 in no small part to try and look better for the new TV rights deal. But you can't go back to like 23, 24 and tell me those were banner years for the promotion either. There's a lot of reasons for this. I think we're just having a rough first quarter for 2026. Part of that is the general sort of apathy because the UFC is getting a lot of guaranteed revenue. Let's also be fair. Part of that is there's a big black hole in the UFC's booking, and it's based around it's the end of June. That White House card is going to operate as a gravity sink. It's going to pull in a lot of fights that might otherwise have gone elsewhere. And that's just, anytime you have a big event like that, everything around it for like 2-3 months, the top end in particular gets depressed to make room and to try and elevate any of those cards like that. Some of this has also just kind of been bad timing overall. Like, oh no, I guarantee you, like the original game plan for some of this was Ilia Topuria would have fought by now, but life intervened. Now we got Khamzat Chimaev as champion. Dude fights once a year. That's just kind of how he goes. Pereira just, God bless him, but couldn't sustain trying to fight as often as he did. No one can at that level, nor should they. We also did have this graphic got floated a bit like, hey, how many male UFC champions right now have a successful title defense? There's one. Alexander Volkanovski is the only current male UFC champion with a current title defense in their reign. Now, some of that is a few of those belts changed hands late last year. Like, Khamzat was never going to fight more than once, so we kind of throw him out. But Joshua Van just won the belt. In fact, let me have a quick look. Current UFC champions. Let me just, for the sake of bringing this up. Okay. So if we run through this real fast, so Tom Aspinall tried to have a title defense and got eye gouged. Pereira just won the belt in October won back the belt in October of last year. So we're only now approaching the point when we should be like expecting his next fight to be announced. Again, that was only 4 months ago, give or take. Like, give that guy a little bit of grace. Khamzat, I have less patience for, but that was still August, so back half of last year. And again, he's just never fighting more than once a year because he isn't. Islam Makhachev only won the welterweight belt in November of last year. So again, not that long ago. Topuria is the big one because he won in June of 25, and you'd expect him to have fought again by now. But he was also very forthright that, like, a couple of nagging injuries and my personal life went to hell. That happens. I mean, then Volk, who did get a title defense, Jan and Van both won their belts in December of last year, literally like 3 months ago, almost like 3-ish months ago. They just didn't have a lot of those belts changed hands less than 6 months ago. I that's just unfortunate timing for that particular stat line. It's not like that belt's been inactive. Hang on. Some of these have. Like, again, lightweight's been a bit inactive, but and heavyweight definitely has. I mean, the strawweight belt only got sorted out in October of last year too. So some of these are just newer champions. I mean, if we look at heavyweight's a mess. Full disclosure, heavyweight's a mess. Because Aspinall was promoted to full champion in June of 25 after winning the interim belt in 23, for crying out loud. So, but he tried to have a title fight in June of 25, and I'm just not going to throw shade at Aspinall struggling to get back after being poked in the eye like that. If you think the UFC should have an interim champion or should strip him and move on, I'm okay with them having an interim champion at this point because Aspinall's future is uncertain. But let's not pretend that belt is, again, it's a bit of a mess. Light heavyweight is not a mess. It's a divisional mess, but that belt's been active. It's been in rotation for a while. Again, Pereira became champion in 23, fought 3 times in 24, then lost in 25 and regained it in 25 at the end of 25, October. So light heavyweight's been in rotation. The division just sucks. Middleweight. DDP stayed pretty active. Let's give him credit for that. Strickland won the belt in September of 23. DDP won it in January of 24, so that's a reasonable timetable. He then defended it twice. Once in August of 24 and then February of 25, and then lost it in August of 25. So DDP kept that belt in rotation. Chimaev is just Chimaev. He's already talking about vacating it to move up. Like, that belt being out of rotation is entirely on the guy holding it. Because the 2 guys who had it before that, in fact, like several of the guys before that, dude, Pereira won that belt in November of 23 and then lost in the rematch to Izzy in April of 23. He won it in November of 22, lost it in April of 23. Reasonable turnaround. Izzy, after winning, went from April when he won it back to losing it to Sean in September of that same year. That belt's been going. Chimaev's just Chimaev. Welterweight's been active. Like Bilal, mostly active. Bilal wins from Leon in July of 24. Okay, he was out for a while. He doesn't lose it until May of 25, but JDM loses to Makhachev November of 25. So, yeah, reasonable time period. Like lightweight, again, lightweight's the big one that's iffy right now for some reasons. I mean, Topuria won the belt, brutal fashion, but he's been champion for 240 days and doesn't have his title defense scheduled. That's a chunk. So it's understandable, all things considered, but that's just out of rotation. Featherweight's been regular. Bless Volkanovski. I mean, seriously, bless that man. Featherweight would kind of be a bit of a mess right now without him. Bantamweight, dude, Merab just had like one of the most active UFC championship reigns ever. You know, so Jan, we'll see what's up with that, but that was just December. And again, flyweight was just in December. So some of this is like the big championship level fights having happened less than 6 months ago. Now, there's a few of these that we should be seeing movement on in the very near future, but like I can't. We got Van's announcement, right? Because they were looking at him against Tyra. Or it's one of those that like is very, very heavily implied, but not fully announced yet. So Van's going to have a decent turnaround, especially for given how that fight went and how unscathed he came out of it. But a lot of this is the back end of 25 was kind of loaded in terms of like a rapidity of high profile fights in the dude like that 4 months from like August to December of 2025 had a lot in it. And we're just dealing with the hangover from that part of it. Part of it is the UFC, the state of MMA more generally is sort of depressed. They're not attracting a lot of talent worldwide for, again, there's a lot of complicating factors there. And the UFC is also at this point not incentivized because they get guaranteed revenue. There's a lot of factors going in there. Look, we're 2 months into the year. I don't want to project too much out of this. But the first cards of this year have not been great. We've had a few good fights. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. The events overall, yeah, they've not been terribly compelling. But I'm going to withhold a little bit of judgment until we get through the first quarter. So, at the end of April, we'll have a much better idea of sort of how this has gone. Right now, yeah, it's not been stellar. But some of that would have been the case no matter what. Like if they'd gone back to ESPN, we'd still be in the same position we're in right now. That's just how the matchmaking lined up and how the calendar kind of fell. But it's also equally true that like the UFC struggled to generate a lot of, hype. They're between major stars, which is never a good place to be. They don't care to try and manufacture them. The UFC's stance has always been, we give you a platform, promote yourself. That's largely been their posture for, again, a long time. So we're between people who are really, really great self-promoters who have kind of caught on. And again, the UFC is not going to go out of its way to. The UFC's idea of giving you a push and giving you promotion is, again, like, hey, he's on this card. So he's going to be on the stage answering questions. Promote yourself. That's their mentality about this. So take it for what it's worth, but there's a lot of factors. At the same time, I do think there's a little bit of alarmism going on because we came to Paramount with all this new money and all this new hype, and it's been a bit pedestrian for the most part since we got here. And that's felt bad because you expect your first impression to be really good. And the UFC's first several cards have been just mostly run of the mill. So it feels worse than it is. To add on to that, it's not great. Like even under other circumstances, this would not be a very good stretch of content from the UFC. So, but I'm not going to take, again, like 2 months and project out entirely doom and gloom yet. That seems premature at a minimum. So my take on that, I hope that answers your question. At least gives you my perspective on it. So if you got follow-ups, again, feel free to ask. I'm happy to interact with you guys any way I can during the course of this. So again, I wanted to. Oh, we did get a main event for another Apex card, headlined by Chris Duncan and Renato Moicano. Is there anything on that card? Hang on. Rafael Estevam and Ethan Ewing, maybe. Jun Young Park and Edmund Shabazian, just because I love the Iron Turtle. I will be happy for that. Good grief. Is there anything else? Azamat Bakoev and Trishan Gore. Okay. Moderately interested to see what's up with Bakoev. Because he's the one who needs work. No, I'm thinking of somebody else. Bakoev coming off the loss to Yusri Belgari. Okay. Still interested to see what he does, because I do think there's a little bit of there's some potential there, but dude, that's not a good card. Tafik Masayev and Samuel Sanchez, Guillermo Pat and Thomas Peterson. Good grief, terrible heavyweight fight. Yeah, that is a night of warehouse fights. I don't know what else to say about that. Looking at that card right now. Okay, is there anything else confirmed? They announced UFC 237 will be in Miami last night. Oh, they did. Okay, they announced that for that fight we do have Joshua Van and Tatsuro Taira. There's some of the stuff they announced last night that I just forgot they'd confirmed. This is not confirmed to be the main event, but that is for the belt. That will be, again, April 11th. Van and Taira is going to be good. That'll be a good fight. So looking forward to that one. What else is there? Dominic Reyes and Johnny Walker, don't care. Tatiana Suarez and Lupi Godinez. I wanted to be excited about Suarez, but injuries really derailed her. Azamat Mirzakhanov and Paulo Costa. That's interesting. At light heavyweight. Costa moving up. I think pretty highly of Mirzakhanov, so that's an interesting fight. Cub Swanson and Nate Landwehr will be fun stupidity. Kyle Dawkins and Vicente Luque shouldn't be fighting. Kevin Holland and Randy Brown, that'll probably fall apart. So we did get some stuff about UFC 237. There's some stuff to be cautiously optimistic about on that card. And again, Van and Taira, it's probably going to be the co-main because the UFC will die before they main event with a flyweight fight these days. Do I like MMA Guru? I don't have an opinion. I don't watch his stuff enough to have an informed take on what he does. He's very successful. God bless him. I just, again, I don't have an opinion. I would have to watch a lot of his stuff, and what I have seen has not necessarily been to my taste, but my taste for consuming MMA content other than what I have to do, like when you spend a lot of time in this doing this, like you don't want to spend a ton of your free time just consuming what other people do. So he's very successful. I begrudge him none of that. I'm happy for him to be successful. Like I said, God bless. There's plenty of space for a lot of different ways to enjoy content in this space. It is not what his stuff is not my preferred MMA content, but that's okay. Plenty of people like what he does, and again, God bless. God bless him. Anyone who enjoys it, thumbs up. I have no beef with it. I am not going to insult him or anyone who enjoys what he does. Just the fact that I don't enjoy most of what he does is not a knock on it. It's just it's just a personal preference. And because I'm an adult, I can say this is not for me, but God bless. I don't need to try and force the totality of the MMA media-ish landscape to conform to what I want. There's plenty of room for all kinds of stuff. So, but yeah, thank you for your question. Again, happy to interact with anybody. As long as you've got something more than a long string of obscenity, I'll talk to you. So again, no shade whatsoever, no hate whatsoever towards him. He's worked really hard to get where he is. And as a guy who spends, 6-7 hours a day, every Saturday evening, basically, talking about the early prelims, typing them up, like I respect the work ethic that goes into doing what he does. And whether I enjoy what he does or not is utterly immaterial to my respect for the amount of work he's done to achieve the success he's achieved. So no problems. Absolutely none. again, whatever my taste, I am not going to sit here and like cast aspersions on him. That's not what I want to do with my time or what I do on these shows. So if you enjoy him, God bless, enjoy. And to him, I'm, hey, happy you're successful, man. Because you didn't stumble ass backwards into that one. You worked for it. And hard work paying off is one of the things that we need more of. So, okay, was there anything else confirmed? We know they're going to China, but we don't know any of the fights on that card. Okay, yeah, I think that's all we knew for fight announcements. So make that listed appropriately. And that it crosses the 2-hour mark. And without anything specific, I think we're going to go check social media, see if anything new is broken. If not, we're going to do plugs and get out of here. So let's check the old social media feed real fast. See how much of that might also be any more meltdowns from the Olympic results. Yeah, I saw that one earlier. Okay, no, that's not fight related. Yeah, some of that. Okay. That's funny. Oh, sorry. So my feed is at least partially full of, because of some of the people I follow, the reaction to the Americans beating the Canadians for the in the Olympic finals for the gold medal. And man, some of that's just funny. Anyway. Yeah, I don't think anything new is broken. And let me just scroll a little bit. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything new there. All right. So anything you can do to interact with the product, of course, appreciated. Yeah, I think we're just going to be done for the evening because it is almost 2 a.m. where I am. So the Dan Hooker stuff, I don't care, respectfully. Like, fighters' personal lives are deeply uninteresting to me. And it's just personal drama that if you want like my take and my worldview about it, I certainly have one, but it's irrelevant. And I don't feel compelled to comment on stuff like that. But for all the people who do the, drama farming, yeah, they got stuff to go on, don't they, for at least a week before the news cycle ticks over. But I don't care. I would not care much for people prying into my personal life that way and commenting on it, so I extend that courtesy to the fighters. Unless they go out of their way to make it a big deal, I feel no compulsion to engage with it. But that's just me. And you have more than enough outlets that are more than happy to accept clicks and discussion points around that stuff. So, and that's another one of those things that I just have to shrug and go, if that's what you're after, God bless, that you can find plenty of it. And I can't hate the people for responding to market incentives either. So, just where we are. All right, that's going to do it for me. So let's get into plugs real fast. Thank you for being here, live or after the fact. I appreciate the heck out of you. Again, like, comment, subscribe. Y'all know the boilerplate there. I don't feel the need to rehash it. This week, you can find me on Monday over on Damn You Hollywood on the W2M Network family of podcasts. Myself, Mark Radulich, and Jason Teasley will be reviewing Psycho Killer. I did not put this on the schedule. I like horror movies, I was happy to give this one a shot, but I feel bad for Mark because this is not his bag. So I think Jason's on that at least. If he's not, we gotta. There's no way he's not. Like he's a giant portion of why that's there. Yeah, just double checking that. So over on Damn You Hollywood, we'll be talking Psycho Killer, which last I checked had a flat 0% on Rotten Tomatoes from the critics, which I find oddly compelling. That takes some skill almost to make something that bad. So tune in for that. I cover professional wrestling and MMA over at 411mania.com. WWE SmackDown on Fridays, UFC events on Saturdays. Last SmackDown was actually okay. Pretty good, actually. SmackDown's been rolling a bit the last 3 weeks. Hopefully they keep that going. This is the go-home show for Elimination Chamber as well. I did pinch hit for TNA Impact, so check that out in the Wrestling Zone as well this last week. And yeah, the UFC event on Saturday. So stop by any of my coverage over there for any and all of those. You should know the times for all that stuff. Have fun. Say hello. I appreciate the heck out of you guys. And we will be back next week. We will review UFC Fight Night 268. Bump that up. So we'll be reviewing the Moreno Kavanagh card, and I'm pretty sure that'll dovetail nicely into the 7th. Yes, indeed, it will. We will preview UFC 326, headlined by, how is that card looking? I haven't actually looked at the card. Holloway and Oliveira, I was very psyched for their first fight and very disappointed with how it went. So their rematch, very much looking forward to it. I have a hard time seeing how Max Holloway doesn't win that fight, but should be good. Kyle Bahalio and Rainier de Ritter. Curious to see how de Ritter bounces back. That'll probably be okay. Rob Font, Raul Rosas Jr., don't care. Gregory Rodriguez and Bruno Ferreira, that's a rematch. He prefers Rodriguez for some reason. He's Brazilian, but he goes by Gregory Rodriguez. Their first fight was pretty good. Curious to see how the rematch goes. Cody Garbrandt and Xiao Long. Garbrandt grasping at straws. Tercios and Montez don't care. Cody Durden and Niyaman Jangal Tumarandenbarl. I butchered that. I apologize to anyone who might be more at ease with Mongolian names. Sumu Darji and Jesus Aguilar. Gaston Bolaños and Jung Lee, actually. Not terrible. Michael Johnson and Drew Dober will be fun for as long as it lasts. They've still got Dr. Nurgozai on the roster, despite him getting tapped out by a guy on top of him. Nurgozai had full guard and got Ezekiel choked. You're a special kind of... I am not going to cast aspersions as like, oh, that's never happened to me. Nope. I've been there. But that is a very, very, very like remedial level of grappling you have if you're getting hit with that. Still on the roster, though, for some reason. His jiu-jitsu is not good. But Holloway and Oliveira is a really good fight. So we'll give that a full preview next week. So come on. Hope you'll stop on back by. Again, I tend to go live around... I'm going to try to make this a little bit less like 2 a.m. Eastern time, because that's midnight my time. Try to get this a little bit earlier, but again, I have considerations that have to be taken into account for when I can do this with the least amount of disruption to those around me or for them disrupting this. So, but late Sunday / early Monday morning is kind of when we do this. So if you want to check this out live, by all means. If not, after the fact is just as good from where I sit. So thank you all very, very much. That is it for me for today. So next week, back here. Oh, come back to me. One more time. Try to get my camera to relax. There we go. So that's it for this week, everybody. Thank you again for listening live after the fact, far in the future, even. Very much happy to have you guys listening. So we are going to be here pretty much every week. This is what I do. So until then, stay safe out there and continue to be well, be safe, and Behave. See ya.